In a landmark decision, the United States Supreme Court has overturned the Trump-era tariffs, fundamentally reshaping international trade. The court ruled that the executive branch overstepped its constitutional authority, reasserting Congress's role in trade and taxation. This decision ends years of legal battles and economic uncertainty, signaling a shift back to a rules-based global economic order. The tariffs imposed under the guise of national security had sparked global tensions and disrupted supply chains. Now, the Supreme Court's ruling draws a clear line on the limits of executive power, setting a precedent for future presidents. As the world reacts, the U.S. faces a new chapter in global cooperation and free trade. To truly understand the impact of today's Supreme Court decision, it's essential to revisit the origins and consequences of the Trump administration's aggressive tariff strategy, which began in 2018 and sent shockwaves through the global economy. Citing national security concerns, President Trump imposed steep tariffs on imported steel and aluminum. This move marked a dramatic departure from decades of U.S. trade policy, which had generally favored open markets and international cooperation. The tariffs not only upended established economic relationships but also strained America's alliances with key trading partners, including Canada, the European Union, and Mexico. The administration soon escalated matters by launching a full-scale trade war against China, targeting hundreds of billions of dollars in Chinese goods with additional tariffs. This tit-for-tat escalation led to widespread disruptions in global supply chains, causing delays, shortages, and increased costs for businesses and consumers alike. The ripple effects were felt not just in the US and China, but across the world. Critics argued that these sweeping tariffs bypassed Congress, relying on executive authority to pursue broad economic goals, rather than addressing genuine national security threats. This sparked heated debates about the limits of presidential power and the proper role of Congress in shaping trade policy. The economic fallout was swift and uneven. While some U.S. industries like domestic steel producers saw short-term gains, many others, especially farmers and manufacturers, suffered from higher input costs and retaliatory tariffs imposed by other countries. Rural communities and export-dependent businesses were hit particularly hard, with some forced to close or lay off workers. As business uncertainty soared, companies struggled to plan for the future. This climate of unpredictability fueled a major legal challenge, questioning whether the president truly had the authority to unilaterally impose such sweeping measures without congressional approval. The resulting instability and constitutional questions set the stage for the Supreme Court's historic intervention, as justices weighed the balance of power between the executive and legislative branches. Today's ruling finally closes a turbulent chapter in American economic history, one marked by economic pain, legal ambiguity, and a national debate over the reach of presidential power in trade policy. This legal battle was about more than economics. It was a fight over the separation of powers in the U.S. Constitution. Importers and businesses argued that only Congress can tax and regulate foreign commerce, not the president. The administration claimed broad authority under trade laws to act swiftly in national interest. Conflicting lower court rulings left businesses in limbo, paying billions in tariffs while awaiting clarity. The Supreme Court was asked to decide, where is the line between executive action and overreach in trade? Today's decision reaffirms Congress's central role and sets a powerful precedent for future trade policy. In a 6-3 decision, the Supreme Court declared the broad tariffs unconstitutional, stating Congress cannot cede its core power to tax and regulate commerce. Chief Justice Roberts wrote that imposing such sweeping tariffs is a legislative act, not an executive one. The court rejected the administration's national security justification, insisting any such claim must be directly linked to defense. The dissent argued the president needs flexibility, but the majority insisted on clear constitutional boundaries. Effective immediately, the tariffs are invalidated, and importers can seek refunds for billions paid since 2018. The financial impact is staggering, with over $150 billion in tariffs now subject to restitution. This ruling marks one of the most significant shifts in U.S. economic policy in decades. The Supreme Court's decision is sending shockwaves through the U.S. and global economies. American consumers can expect lower prices on imported goods as tariffs disappear, easing inflation. Importers and manufacturers welcome relief, but domestic industries once shielded by tariffs now face renewed competition. Global markets rallied, and countries targeted by tariffs praised the return to rules-based trade. The Canadian dollar and Mexican peso strengthened, reflecting optimism about North American trade. Businesses now have greater certainty for long-term planning and investment. The U.S. is signaling a move away from unilateral protectionism toward global economic integration. The transition will be challenging for some, but the overall outlook is positive for growth and stability. Across the United States, the recent ruling was met with widespread relief among business owners and industry leaders. Many hailed it as a much-needed victory for both consumers and the broader economy, emphasizing that it brings a sense of stability after years of uncertainty. For countless companies, especially those reliant on imports, the decision is seen as a turning point that could help restore confidence in the marketplace and encourage new investments. Retailers are optimistic that the removal of tariffs will allow them to lower prices for everyday goods, making products more affordable for American families. Small business owners who have struggled with rising import costs now see a lifeline that could help them stay competitive and even expand their operations. Many hope this will lead to increased hiring and renewed growth in local communities. However, not everyone is celebrating. Labor unions, such as the United Steelworkers, have voiced strong concerns about the potential impact on American jobs. They warn that, without protective measures, critical industries could face renewed threats from foreign competition. Union leaders are urging Congress to take action to safeguard domestic manufacturing and ensure that American workers are not left behind in the new trade environment. Trade experts and economists generally agree that the ruling restores much-needed predictability and efficiency to the global trading system. While they acknowledge that some sectors will face adjustment costs and may need time to adapt, most believe the long-term benefits will outweigh the short-term challenges. The decision is expected to streamline supply chains and reduce administrative burdens for many companies. On the international stage, business leaders have welcomed the end of tariff uncertainty, particularly in industries like automotive manufacturing, where cross-border supply chains are essential. The ruling is seen as a positive step toward rebuilding trust and cooperation between trading partners. The European Automobile Manufacturers Association, for example, praised the decision, saying it helps restore confidence in transatlantic trade and paves the way for stronger economic ties between Europe and the United States. Industry groups across the globe are hopeful that this will lead to more stable and predictable business conditions. The ruling also highlights just how interconnected the global economy has become. Decisions made in Washington can have ripple effects that are felt in factories, ports, and offices around the world. It's a reminder that U.S. trade policy doesn't just impact Americans, it reverberates across continents, shaping the flow of goods and the fortunes of businesses everywhere. Financial analysts are largely in agreement. While some industries will need to adapt to the new environment, the overall net benefit to both the U.S. and the global economy is expected to be substantial. Lower costs, increased trade, and renewed investor confidence could drive growth in the months and years ahead. As the dust settles, attention now turns to how businesses and policymakers will navigate this new landscape. The coming months will be crucial as companies adjust their strategies and lawmakers consider additional steps to support American industries and workers in a rapidly changing global market. The Supreme Court's landmark ruling has sent shockwaves through Washington, reverberating across every branch of government and shaking the very foundations of how trade policy is shaped in the United States. Both the White House and Congress have been forced into action, scrambling to address the immediate fallout and to reassure the public and key stakeholders that the government remains in control of the nation's economic future. The administration now faces the daunting challenge of crafting a comprehensive new trade strategy, one that can adapt to the loss of unilateral tariff powers and still protect American interests in a rapidly changing global economy. Industries that once relied on tariff protections are now left vulnerable, prompting urgent meetings between business leaders and government officials to seek new forms of support and relief. Meanwhile, Congress, newly empowered by the decision, is vowing to reclaim its constitutional authority over trade, promising a new era of legislative oversight and involvement. Lawmakers from both parties see this as a critical moment to reform outdated trade laws, clarify the limits of presidential power, and ensure that future trade decisions reflect the will of the people. The decision has reignited fierce partisan debate, with Democrats and Republicans clashing over the proper balance of power and the best path forward for American workers and businesses. Some critics are decrying the ruling as an example of judicial activism, arguing that the courts have overstepped their bounds and undermined executive authority. Others, however, are hailing it as a long overdue constitutional victory, celebrating the restoration of checks and balances and the reassertion of congressional power. As a result, trade policy is set to become a defining issue in the upcoming elections, with candidates from both parties eager to stake out their positions and appeal to voters concerned about jobs, the economy, and America's role in the world. The debate over protectionism versus free trade is intensifying, with candidates promising bold new approaches and voters demanding clear answers. The ruling effectively removes unilateral tariffs as a tool for future presidents, making it clear that any significant changes to trade policy will now require broader consensus and cooperation. This shift demands more diplomacy and negotiation on the world stage, as the United States must now work more closely with allies and trading partners to achieve its economic goals. Washington's approach to trade has been fundamentally altered, ushering in a new era of shared responsibility and heightened political scrutiny. The long-term political aftershocks of this decision are only beginning to unfold, promising to reshape the landscape of American trade policy for years to come. Governments worldwide have welcomed the Supreme Court's decision as a return to predictable, cooperative U.S. trade policy. European leaders called it a breath of fresh air for transatlantic relations, while Canada and Mexico praised the renewed stability under USMCA. China's response was measured but positive, seeing the ruling as a step toward de-escalation and renewed dialogue. The decision is viewed globally as a victory for rules-based trade over protectionism. Developing nations hope the U.S. will recommit to multilateral institutions like the WTO. The ruling reassures America's allies and trading partners, restoring faith in the international economic system. For smaller economies, it signals a more stable environment for growth and investment. The world sees this as a pivotal moment for global economic cooperation. The Supreme Court's decision closes a turbulent era, but opens a new chapter of opportunity and challenge. The U.S. must now rebuild trust at home and abroad, supporting workers and communities affected by renewed competition. Investments in retraining and innovation will be key to a just transition. Internationally, America has a chance to lead in shaping fair, modern trade rules and strengthening global institutions. The end of tariffs is a reminder of the balance between national interest and global cooperation. The future of trade will depend on engaged citizens and thoughtful policy, not just court decisions. As the world watches, the next chapter in U.S. trade is just beginning.